Hello, welcome back to into today's video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the rest of February with CFSV2. We'll do that at the end of the video. Also have a look at the chance of some wintry conditions over the weekend. Yesterday there was the suggestion that we could run low pressure in across the south of England and possibly produce some snow on the northern eastern side of that area of low pressure, particularly on Saturday. Well, the GFS is trending that further southwards, so it looks like those low pressure will be trending in towards France over the weekend and probably give us a miss. So we're probably just going to say fairly chilly and dry, if anything. However, the East CWF is still going for the low pressure to be impacted. As you remember, yesterday it didn't really suggest snow, it just suggested rains. It was a long way north with the low pressure. Today it's trended it further southwards, like the GFS, but now it's sort of to the south of, just to the south of England. So it would bring snow some parts of the country on Saturday. But if it carries on trending it southwards, this low pressure is going towards France, and it will probably just stay dry and quite chilly. I'll show you the charts in a second. But before I get on with that, just to say about the ads. There's links to articles on all the pages at Gazma. Have a browse through which and click through the links if there's any articles that you're interested in. Thanks very much for doing that. So just very quick, starting off with the GFS temperature and precipitation ensemble. So we've got the red line here, which is the 30-year temperature average, and you can see that we're a little bit below average today and likely to be staying there into weekend as well. So a fairly chilly week coming up, a bit colder than average, nothing dramatic really, and even at night we're still going to be struggling to get frost going, certainly till we get to the end of the week and the weekend, and then the risk of frost probably increases a little bit. There's a slight tick up in the temperatures happening Friday into Saturday. Dates are on the bottom of the charts. This is Saturday 13th just here. Slight tick up in the temperatures there. That's as that low pressure is coming in, but I was talking about that might produce some snow for parts of the country, but the GFS is increasingly trending that to the south of the country. And then after that, once that gets out of the way, we see the temperatures dropping again through to the start of next week, before there's a general, and quite a slow, but a general recovery in the temperature taking place through into middle and second part of the month. The rainfall spikes show that we have got some rainfall coming up. So we've had a wet morning down in the far southeast this morning. That's on its way out. We will get a drier slot coming in then through the rest of this week. Getting to weekend and the precipitation spikes come back and they last through into the start of next week. So with these fairly cool temperatures, there is still the risk of some precipitation around over the weekend, particularly perhaps with the far south. But down in the far south, I think it's likely to be just rain anyway. It's whether this can get as far north as, say, Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia, Lincolnshire on Saturday. That will be quite important, really, for whether we can get some wintry conditions briefly over the weekend. So if we quickly have a look at the generic charts, this is the GFS for Saturday, and it's this little area of low pressure just here. That could be bringing some wintry conditions if it's far enough north. It's coming to relatively cold air. We've got the air coming down from the north and the northeast. I'm not talking about bitterly cold or severely cold, but it's fairly cold, this, at the end of the week and start of weekend. And as this low pressure comes into that cold air on its northern and eastern flank, I was explaining this yesterday, on this side of the low pressure, there is a risk of some wintry conditions. Now, down on this side of the low pressure, is going to be rain on the southern and western side, because we're within the mild sector of the low pressure. So that's where it is at 6 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. And you see, but as we go through in 6 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, what's happened is that the low pressure, first low pressure is there across Germany. The second one is going down into the Bay of Biscay. So it does look as though these areas of low pressure being trended increasingly to the south. There's another one just there in the middle part of the Atlantic. That's probably going in the same direction, which is doing something like that. So it looks as though these areas of low pressure are running to the south of us, really, as we get through in towards the weekend. It may give some heavy rain, possibly a little bit of wintriness for parts of France, but for many parts of the UK, probably not a great deal. This is how we look on we're on Monday. So we take the low pressure away to the east into central parts of Europe, and then we're going into a northerly wind with this ridge building through the central part of the Atlantic. So it turns dry and cold, really, as we get through to the start of next week, having a little bit of a go at building a ridge over Scandinavia there. But look at this area of low pressure. It's the developing to the south of Greenland. That's our next Atlantic storm, probably, with a central pressure. Hard to see what it is, but it could be down to something like 930 millibars there, close to Iceland. Really deep storm. And as we go through Tuesday into Wednesday next week, that just turns winds back into the Atlantic. It brings active weather across the country, bringing wet and windy conditions with them. And then it stays very unsettled, as you expect, with such a deep storm. Stays very unsettled through the second half next week. And this is how we end up on day 10, Friday the 19th of February, bring down this northerly northwest wind. So it turns a bit cold again at the end of next week, but it's still very unsettled. The ECMWF, so here we are for Friday. So again, we're within relatively cold air. Friday's low being trending towards northern France, so that's not going to do a great deal. Friday probably just dry and cold, if anything. We go through into Saturday. This is midnight on Saturday. There's probably some sort of a system coming through here on this kink in the isobars. Again, that's generally just to the south of us. This area of low pressure, though, is waiting to the west of the UK. And the ECM does run that in overnight, Saturday into Sunday. So on midnight on Sunday, that low pressure is sitting just to the southeast of the country. Remember, the GFS is trending this into France. This, the ECMO, has this area of low pressure just to the southeast, which means that the northern-eastern side of this low pressure is really through the Midlands, Lincolnshire, places like that, possibly East Anglia. And there would be a risk of snow on that one. Of course, the concern is that the ECM is trending this south compared to yesterday. If it trends it any further south, as the GFS has done, then this is going to be running through France, and we won't get any precipitation from this at all. But this does suggest probably rain down in the far south, southeast, snow possible for parts of the Midlands, Lincolnshire and East Anglia. But if this is trended any further south, we're going to start to see precipitation just grazing the channel and going in towards France. There's the isotherm showing the -5 isotherm is in there across Wales and the Midlands and East Anglia particularly, so that's where the greatest risk of wintry conditions will be, sleet or snow. By the time we go through to the start of next week, this is Monday the 15th, that low pressure is off into Germany. And then we're just in a straight northerly wind. That's a cold wind, and it will be bringing in snow showers to the north and the east of the country in particular. But that's quickly cut off as this ridge builds in from the Atlantic. But probably quite frosty to start next week under that ridge. And then for the middle part of next week, well, this is the area of low pressure that the GFS is winding up into quite a major storm to the south of Greenland. ECM doesn't do quite as much with that. It does have a go at building a ridge over Scandinavia much more strongly than the GFS. So this probably keeps us quite cold, especially in the east and south, through into the middle part of next week. And then on Thursday, there's some sort of a trough system coming in off the Atlantic. I'm not sure what the upper air temperatures are with that, but they're not that warm, so there could be a band of rain and snow moving in across the country on Thursday next week, and then we go through to day 10, which is going to be Friday the 19th of February, and then we re-establish a milder westerly wind. So it does eventually get to this milder Atlantic push for the ECM by the end of next week, but it takes longer to get there. And there's a better chance of keeping it cold, at least for the east and south, through into the middle part of next week anyway. However, eventually it does get into this milder westerly flow. And let's see how things are developing through the rest of the month. So these are the 500 millibar height anomaly charts from the CFS V2 for the coming month. These are broken down into week periods. So the first week period takes us from the 9th through to the 15th of February, the coming week. And we're under quite a cold trough of low pressure for this one, the blue curve's riding over top of the country, and we're entrenching fairly cold air into that trough of low pressure. So that's the reason you're going to be turning colder through the course of the coming week. And there is that wintry potential if we get through to the weekend, if those low pressure systems are close enough to us. But if they run through France, then we'll just stay pretty chilly and mostly dry. This is how week 2 is looking. This is the 16th through 22nd of February. Still a trough of low pressure, more or less over the country. It's drifted a little bit further north, so the flow's more Atlantic-based here. It's a little bit milder, but still pretty unsettled with showers or longer spells of rain. And then we go through to week 3. This is the 23rd through 29th of February, very end of the month. Trough of low pressure is out to the northwest then, with a general westerly, southwesterly flow coming in. So this is a good deal milder, certainly, But still fairly unsettled, especially in the north and west. Driest conditions would be in the south and southeast. Notice all this red over top of the North Pole. That's northern blocking. It doesn't look that impactful for us, actually. It's sitting in the wrong position, really, to give us colder weather. Most of the cold from that will be going down, particularly towards the Pacific, in that sort of zone just there, possibly down into Siberia and Asia as well. But for us, we're still generally in a milder Atlantic-driven flow. And then week 4, from the 1st to the 7th of March, so just going into the start of the spring, basic idea is high pressure in there across Spain and Portugal, and low pressure up to the north and west, which means the flow is generally westerly. So that will be a westerly, a fairly mild Atlantic-driven start to the spring, with potentially quite pleasant conditions down in the south and the southeast, but some wet and windy weather likely in the north and the northwest. The temperature anomalies for the coming months stack up like this. The 9th to the 15th, coming week, is a bit colder than average. You haven't had that very often this winter, but we have got a slightly colder than average week coming up. However, week 2, the 16th to 22nd, very quickly sees a recovery in the temperatures, going milder than average through that 3rd week of February. Week 4, which takes us to the end of the month, looking very significantly milder than average. And then we go to week 4, which is the 1st week of March, the 1st through to the 7th of March, and that's looking a very mild week as well, significantly milder than average. Of course, that could be really pleasant for the start of March. By then, the sun is getting a lot of strength to it, so dare I say, a little taste of spring there, perhaps, for the very beginning of the new month. So that's how it's looking. We've got a risk of some wintry weather coming up over the weekend, particularly, I think, focused on Saturday, late Saturday into Sunday. But if that low pressure goes any further southwards than the ECM is predicting, the GFS is already taking it further south, then it's just going to impact France. We're just going to stay pretty dry and very chilly over the weekend. Beyond that, well, we'll probably start off next week quite cold, and then we'll re-establish westerly winds, I think, and that could take us through to the end of the month, actually, on quite a mild but fairly unsettled note. That's how I was looking today. 5-day forecast tomorrow, so come back to that. But that's all for now.